Now, lawmakers in Nigeria are reviewing the country's local content law following newly proposed amendments on existing local content bill, which proponents say is necessary to fast-track the country's drive towards industrialization on one hand, and then the ability to provide legal framework for implementation of local content policies in key sectors, among others. Joining me for this conversation is Kayode Akindele, a partner at TIA Capital. Kayode, a pleasure to have you join us for this conversation on Power Lunch West Africa. Now, conversations about local content policy and implementation in Nigeria are age-long. They're not new to us in this country. But now when you hear about the parliament debating such issues, what comes to your mind?
To be honest, I think it's unnecessary. You have a situation where a lot of this is to do with procurement, and our procurement laws, as many ministers have said, I think Minister Fashola mentioned previously, are quite cumbersome at the moment. They need to be simplified and increase transparency, because otherwise you create a bureaucratic bottleneck which can slow down government business, procurement, and various other, and even infrastructure projects. So I think, look, trying to put an extra layer of bureaucracy will probably defeat the purpose of what it's trying to achieve.
So in your view now, let's backtrack to the fact that Nigeria first signed its local content bill into law first in 2010. That's 10 years ago. And there have been arguments over the years for and against that law. For you, is this, now we have Parliament talking amendments and expecting certain changes to be made. What divide of the argument are you on, Kayode? Have you seen results that are positive from the country, from the Local Content Act of the year 2010, first of all?
Definitely. I mean, the 2010 Act focused on the oil and gas industry, and we've seen developments in the oil and gas industry where there are more local players taking part in the industry than before the Act. So it's been successful. But I think, look, trying to put a law that spreads across all the ministries, and you create a local content department in each ministry, which is going to have its own department, I think is just going to maybe complicate the entire procurement process in the ministries. What we should be doing actually is centralizing some of the non-specialized procurement, so the government can use its economies of scale to ensure they get the best pricing. Because if you look at the national budget for items like, for example, the same vehicle, you find 10 different prices depending on which ministry is bidding for them in the budget, and that just can't be right. So you need to simplify the process and increase transparency so you can get the best value. Now, if you want to increase local content and get more Nigerian companies to be able to provide for Nigerian government, I think what you need to do is address some of the fundamental issues, structural issues we have, which is something like power. Unless you can get reliable power from the public grid in Nigeria, that is a big stumbling block for local manufacturers to be able to be competitive when bidding for government contracts.
Now, Kayode, I'm looking at this argument from another perspective now. It does appear as though the existing Local Content Act has a bias for the oil and gas industry. And even if you look at the amendments being proposed calling for specific focus on the hydrocarbon sector, it still does look like there's more bias for the oil and gas sector. And then when you look at the angle where this new propositions for amendments are saying that there should be a specialized interest across sectors, across ministry, you say that's duplication. But do you not see an argument for the need to diversify local content across sectors in the country as well?
Yes, there is a big need for diversified and local content and encourage Nigerian businesses, but there are different ways you can achieve that. By creating a new bureaucracy across all the ministries, you don't necessarily go and get the result you want. The easiest way to do this is first address the structural issues. Let's try and sort out the power issue. Hopefully the new Siemens deal the Ghanaian government is proposing will help on the way towards that. Next, we need to simplify the procurement process. Let's make it more transparent and simplify the process so that you have a situation in Nigeria where to get a final investment decision or even an investment decision on infrastructure projects is one of the longest in the world. You spend 2-3 years trying to get an investment decision. That increases the costs. And a lot of that has to do with our procurement process. Let's simplify that process or increase transparency. Secondly, I think you need to bring in and say a directive that says, okay, fine, for Nigerian ministries, if there's a bid for contracts or for items and they're the same price, then preference should go to Nigerian companies. But are we really saying that if Nigerian companies or Nigerian bidder has a higher price than an international bidder, that we want to pay the higher price. I don't think we want to do that. We want to encourage Nigerian companies to be more competitive, and they should be competitive if we can sort out some of the structural issues we have. So I think there are simpler ways of achieving this rather than trying to have an omnibus bill that creates another layer of bureaucracy that could just complicate the process.
So that's you raising an argument there in favor of merit. Now, the proponents of this amendment, I think specifically Senator Teslim Balogun, says that the public procurement policy would be relied upon to make local content compliance a requirement for granting certificate of no objection to procuring entities. That's a lot of semantics there. But basically, what do you identify as being faulty with the current public procurement policy that needs to change for this to work?
I think if you look at the BPP Act, there's a quite a step-by-step process that creates various layers of bureaucracy that slows down decision making in terms of trying to get a certificate for projects. And a lot of ministers, especially I think Minister Fashola mentioned it when you at Works and Housing, and various other ministers, that it slows down the process. And any slowdown of the process unnecessarily increases the price. Now, what we need to do is try and simplify that BPP process. Because what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to achieve the lowest cost, but the lowest cost at the quicker for procurement and for infrastructure projects. And so we can do that by simplifying the process by increasing transparency. And if you increase transparency and reduce the bureaucratic legs in each of the parts of the process, you reduce the avenues of potential corruption. Now, I think if we look at the BPP Act and seek to amend that so it's more simplified and more transparent, I think that will achieve that. In terms of local content, we need to address structural issues, because a lot of the issues that affecting, especially if you look at non-oil and gas issues, if you look at the wider economy, what's making Nigerian companies less competitive is things like power. They have to generate their own power most of the time, which increases their costs. And we also need to invest in the educational sector. We need to be able to educate specialized Nigerians in specialities so they can address issues like in finance, in oil and gas, in various other locations, because we're finding a lot of companies that they cannot find qualified Nigerians to do the role. So it's all right saying you want to have local content, people should hire Nigerians, but if you haven't got Nigerians who our education system hasn't educated to the level to be able to fill those roles, then what do you do? So I think you need to have a plan that includes some of the structural issues. Otherwise, you just create an extra layer of bureaucracy that's just not going to achieve the results you want.